Awesome.
Hello and welcome, Inspired Podcast community. This is your new episode. My name is Caroline, and my today's guest is Mark Collins, and I am so happy that he said yes to our interview. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Caroline. Thank you for having the conversation with me.
Oh, thanks again. And let me introduce you to the audience. You are a business and life coach with the passion to see people equipped to be the hero they were created to be. What a wonderful vision or mission you have. You authored your first book, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, Not by Default. You developed and launched your mystery, I want to say, mastery online course, and you have spoken at conferences throughout the Western US, and you have seen hundreds of lives changed and callings unleashed. Please tell us more about what inspired you to become a life coach.
Well, I appreciate the conversation and the question. I guess where it started from, Caroline, was needing it in my own life. I tell people this all of the time that the course that I created, Life Mastery, and the book I wrote, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, wasn't because I had a great idea to help other people. What it really was me documenting what it took for me to be able to kind of unpack some things that I needed to overcome and unleash the person inside of me that I believed I could be, but I just wasn't seeing in my life. So once I was able to figure out my own journey, understand that there was more for my life than what I was living, and figuring out a way to get there, then I decided I would put it in a format that would help other people do the same.
Wow, that's exciting, and that makes sense to me. You find it out for yourself first, and
Yeah.
then you put it into words, of course, action, and you publish a book. How wonderful this is. Of course, I have another question. Just a
Sure.
second. Where is my question about your book? Your book, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design, Not by Default, has resonated with many. What inspired you to write this book, and what do you hope readers take away from it?
Yeah, I think for me, a great question, by the way. The first is the title, Living Life by Design, Not by Default. What I find, at least in my own life, and certainly with a lot of the clients that I've had and people I know, is that we expect to live life by default, which means that life happens and I respond to it. Like you and I having the technical difficulties before we got on here, right? Things happen, and it happens to all of us throughout the globe. I think the one human factor is the same, that life happens to everyone. So sometimes it's great, sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's challenging, and sometimes it's tragic. But what I try and inform my readers and my students and my clients of is you're actually meant to live life by design, because you're the answer to the circumstance you're walking into. When we look at ourselves as just a response to life happening, we can consider ourselves potentially a victim, and at worst, just kind of a bystander in our own life. And what I tell my students is that you're actually a hero in hiding in a lot of circumstances. You're actually more capable, more able, smarter, wiser, able to do the things that you're called to do more than you would even know. And when you start to have that shift of understanding, you start to see that man or that woman show up in your life. So you start to see yourself acting in ways that bring solutions, bring what I call life mastery into your own life.
Oh, I love your choice of words here, and also what you said about that we are the response to life. Yes,
Yeah.
and we get to choose, of course, what this response will be. So thank you so much for sharing. And I
Yeah.
understand the purpose of your book. So let me see what the next question is. As a business and life coach, you emphasize the idea of people becoming the hero they were created to be. Can you share a success story from your coaching experience where you witnessed someone embrace this concept and transform their life?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. There's actually a couple that come to mind because they had success in different areas. One was a client of mine, a student whose name was Brett, a person who was very successful in business, really, achieving at a high level in his business, in his industry. The challenge was he was kind of like I was in some of the aspects that I had to overcome in my life. He had a fear of failure, so he would, be very successful on the outside, be able to close business deals and create his own industry, industry leading uh, products and services, but on the inside he felt like he was just one or two steps away from failure. That, the things he was trying to do, whether it was selling his course or his industry in the real estate industry, he always felt like failure was just around the corner. And so he was successful, but he would never feel successful. He wouldn't have the joy and the satisfaction of creating his, business success. He would actually just feel relief because he was so happy that he didn't fail. So through the course of this, walking through the life mastery, the strategies and tools that we give him, he was able to really start to unpack some things that we do with all of our students. Mostly it's starting with understanding who you're created to be, that you are who you are apart from your success, your title, your role, your income, and all of those things. And in that place, start to see that he was a person of value that wasn't attached to his business success or failure, that whether he succeeded at a business deal or it didn't work out well, it didn't change who he was and the value he had as a person. And so the interesting thing was, it not only gave him, permission to really envision a higher level of success and business acumen that he didn't have before, because now he gave himself permission. Before, he would hold back, right? You only go as far as you're comfortable with when you don't know who you are, when you're fearing that you might fail. And so for him, it was really him being unleashed in his business. But the interesting thing was, it was also him being more present in his home. Because, when you're struggling in an area of your life, when you're dealing with something, those emotions don't just stop when you leave the business and you walk home or you go home that day. They show up in your relationship with your wife, with your friends, with your family. And so for him, the thing that was most exciting was not just that he could achieve at a higher level because he gave himself permission to really try, but that it really had an income and an outcome in his own family as he was able to do that. And then really quickly, there was another student, Vance, another business individual who he was a great provider, but he was not emotionally present in his own family, because of his past and his experiences and being in relationships that let him down. He was a guarded individual. So he would be there, physically in his home with his wife and with his children, but emotionally and relationally, he was guarded and kind of behind a wall. So walking through the life mastery course and really unpacking who he was created to be and the truth about his experiences. What I tell my students, Caroline, is you either live from your identity or you live from your past, your experiences, and the lies you've believed. Well, unfortunately, Vance, like many of us, lived from the lies he believed, that, past disappointments were going to equate to future disappointments. And in being able to unpack the truth in that and understanding that he was more than the relationships, and that whatever people did that hurt him didn't mean that every relationship was going to turn out that way. He was able to be healed of some of those things and be engaged in his family. So he actually showed up. So he was emotionally relevant in his family and in his relationship, which absolutely brought such great joy to his marriage and to his children as well, because their father was actually present, not just physically, but emotionally and relationally as the father they wanted him to be.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And what you said about the choice we have to live from, I don't know, from our past, or
Yeah.
still in the past, or you called it live from your identity. The identity is what you choose it to be. Of course, you can still identify with your past. Then you are trapped or attached to your past. And
Yeah.
I think you reveal in the Life Mastery course what your true self is, your true identity that never changes. So you have the choice and you can live a life full of joy. And you said emotional, and also to be present for the family and loved ones. Thank you so much for sharing. Of course, I have another question. It's about your mentors and coaches. Do you have or had coaches, and who was the best coach you ever had?
That is a really great question. So yes, I definitely had a lot of people that I learned from, whether it was classic books like How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie, or people who are well known in the personal development space like Tony Robbins. I studied everything that I could get my hands on because, just to unpack my life a little bit, Caroline, when I grew up in a household with a very strong father who I didn't feel like I could measure up to. We could unpack that if you'd like, but the ultimate understanding in that was that I felt on the inside that I was better than the person I was living. I was better than the actions I was taking, the words I was using, and the direction I was going. But I didn't know how to get to that place for that person that I felt I was on the inside to actually show up. And so I took all of these personal development courses, read every book I could, whether it was free or whatever I could afford, however, whatever cost I could afford, I would take all of those courses for sure. So I've had a lot of folks try to learn from everybody because, again, I believe there was more than what I was living, and I wanted somebody to help guide me there. That's actually where I developed my course, because a lot of them had a lot of value. The one thing that they didn't provide was the thing that I needed, which was transformation. It wasn't me managing my issues and habiting my way, which I call habiting your way to freedom, which never happens. You can't habit your way to freedom, but you can habit your way to create a habit that will postpone, the challenges you're walking through. So I've had a lot of coaches and a lot of trainers. As I'm a person of faith, of course, my faith had something to do with that as well. So, I just, to be totally honest, it would probably be my faith more than any of the personal development things I walked through. So, yeah, that was a great question. I don't know that I have an answer that could point to one single person, while many of them have invested in my life in a way that's mattered.
Wow, I love your answer. Thank you so much. And Faith reminds me, you didn't mention him, but you had him in mind. Of course, I have to mention Napoleon Hill, and there's a whole chapter about
Yes.
faith as well. And what I learned is I studied every day here, 1 page per day, by the way. And
Good.
what I learned is that the expression of the word faith changed during the years. So the book was published 90 years ago, and now it's a little mix between faith and belief. But I know what the message is, and also what your message is, that your faith led you to be the person, or to allow yourself to be that person, to show up as the person that masters their life, right? Okay, let
Yes.
me take a look at the next question. How much fun this is to be with you here. You've spoken at conferences across the Western US and developed an online course on life mastery. How do you tailor your message and approach to different audiences, whether it's a live conference or an online setting?
Yeah, that's another great question. Thank you, Caroline. I think you have the ability to do different things with different groups. And so for me, the online course, my life mastery course, is really me doing a deep dive into everything that you need to live out the life that you're created for. And so I have a fully established, course that has a multitude of lessons in it, and you're able to take it at your own pace. But it has what I call the full blueprint of what it takes to go from, living from the lies or the hurts or the pains of your past to becoming free, to becoming the person you're created to be, living from the identity that you thought you were versus the one you were created to be. And so that's the course. And so you can really go deeply in there, right? And I can give them tools and strategies and things to take home. And you could do some of that in a conference setting, or I was speaking at a facility today. But in those settings where you have one opportunity for a conversation or a weekend, like I've done in some conferences, you try and give them the things that they can take home. So with the life mastery course, it's everything. You have, what I call the full owner's manual of how to live out a life mastery life. In a conference, you give them, those 2 or 3 things, or if it's a one conversation, I give them that one thing that I hope they take away and they can use in their life. And for me, it'll start with identity always. And somewhere within there'll be something about a mindset and your thought life, like some folks in Napoleon Hill. I mean, it's pretty pervasive in all of personal development that there's some level of understanding your thoughts and your mindset. So I always try and give some of that.
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much. And I think when you talk about conferences, it's not like a workshop, right? You are on stage and telling your story, or you transport your message. So you can give exercises
Yeah.
that people can do in their mind, like imagination and so. But
Yeah.
in the life mastery, you can also say, grab a pen and a piece of paper and write, or take 30 minutes in silence and write down, and that, yeah, this might be the difference
Yeah.
as well. So we have another question. Let me see what it is. It is, with so many people feeling stuck or unsure of their purpose, what are some of the key strategies you teach in your life mastery course to help individuals break free from living life by default and start living by design?
Great question, Caroline. So, first off is the revelation that there actually is a difference. for all of us, at least all of the people I know, living life by default is kind of what you think you're supposed to do. That's the expectation that people have in life, is that, well, this is, life is going to happen and I'm going to respond to it, versus you being the response that happens to your life. And so for us, it always starts with the foundation of your identity. Everything we do comes around identity, who you're created to be. Because what you find is, when I don't know who I am, the world has to make up the difference. And that's where you find people who are hugely successful, and then maybe their business or their life or their relationships are a disaster. There's people who are, highly successful, and then all of it falls apart. Or there are people that, they have great levels of success, but they don't have a lot of level of respect, because they're somebody who is using success as a barometer for life, and that sometimes brings wounds, and they use people and do things that aren't really positives in their life. So we start with identity, because I believe this, that every person has a calling, and everybody has a unique design that's theirs and theirs alone. And in that place, you're not trying to measure up. Again, with some of the personal development programs I read and I worked through, a lot of it is me trying to measure up to who the person is who's of success, right? If you do the things I do, you can become like me. Well, that never worked for me, because I knew I wasn't Tony Robbins, or I wasn't Napoleon Hill. Although there was value in the teaching, trying to become like that person was really becoming an imitation of somebody else instead of an original of myself. And so in that place, we start with identity. Who are you created to be? Because for us, that's not just the foundation, but that's the barometer of the life that you're living. And so that you're not using success, and you're not using your title, and you're not using your position and your role and your business to prove who you are. You're living out who you are in your business, in your role, in your position. And so we always start with identity. Who are you? I start with a tool, which is a I am statement. And I tell them, start with this, write down a description of who you are. Who were you created to be, apart from all of those things, apart from your job, your title, your role? Who's the person on the inside? Because that's the person that matters, and that's the person that's going to show up in your relationships, your business, and your life. And so when we start with the establishment of that, and then we'll work into some transformational strategies. For us, there's a 3-step transformational strategy: mastering your thoughts, words, and actions. I tell my students and my clients this: who you think you are, you'll become. So you are where you're at today simply by the words you've said and the things you've believed about yourself. So if there is a higher level that you're called to, if there's more that you're person that needs to come out, that person on the inside, like I said, for myself, well, that's going to start by me changing my thoughts to align with who I am, not with what my past has told me I was. So we always will start with that as well, mastering your thoughts. And it's not just mastering them, it's reminding yourself. It's giving yourself daily exercise of understanding who you are. And we use the I am statement for that, because the I am statement is a perfect example of reminding you who you are, so that that man or woman shows up in your business, your relationships, in your life.
Wow, that's amazing what you said. Thank you so much. About living life by default is, you think you are that person, but you are not, and you are responding to circumstances. And instead of looking who you are created to be, was that I don't know if
Yes.
it's correct English.
No, you are
Thank
correct.
you so much. You are created, and you find this person, and you fall in love with that person, and immediately
Yeah.
you start acting, thinking, and I know, be, do, have, being that person, dressing like that person, showing up as that person. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for sharing. I'm impressed, and I have to re-listen to this podcast again, of course, because there were so many nuggets in it. Of course, I have another question about your goals. Do you set goals for yourself, or intentions? And what is one of those goals for, I don't know, 2024, 2025? You choose.
Yeah. That's a great question. And I'll try and give you a short answer to a long subject. So life mastery, we have this course, Life Mastery, Living Life by Design is the book. And so we talk about the 4 pillars of life mastery: your identity, experience, meaning, and emotion. So we unpack all of that in the course, but one of the things we reveal in it as well is the 5 areas or 5 spheres of life mastery. And so for us, it's the spiritual realm, relational, vocational, physical, and financial. And so those are the 5 areas of life mastery. And I say that because for myself, I have goals, and I have a design for each of those areas. And so for me and the clients that I have, the students that I teach, it's saying this, okay, so I'm not one of those people that goes out there and says that everybody's going to be a millionaire or we should all be famous or whatever those things are that some people would try and convince you that are true. But what I do say is there's a life of fulfillment or a life of success. A life of fulfillment is me literally living from who I'm created to be at the highest level I'm created for in every area of my life. Success is really just you working hard enough, long enough to be, more successful than the next person in that category, that field. And so what I tell them is we're shooting for fulfillment, which that means what does life mastery look like? Me living from who I'm created to be at the highest level I'm created for. And so, yeah, I have goals in each of those areas. I have what I consider my life mastery life in each of those areas. I remind myself of them. I have them written down. And goals in 2024. And at this point, it's really kind of continually to deeply invest in the teachings and the training into our teachings for life mastery in as many students as possible, as many places as possible. I have goals for next year. I'm already honestly, I published my book at the end of last year, end of 2023, November 2023. I'm making it available and making people aware of it this year. I'm actually already starting to write the next book that I'm going to have, which is going to be Life Mastery Motivation, Stories to Inspire You. And so it's going to give people nuggets so that they can see, not just the teaching and training, but the inspiration behind it, which really helps people. So, yeah. So for me, it's I'm already writing the next book, or at least writing some chapters of it right now, and developing the things that we're developing, some other courses that we're putting in place, right? Just more and more resources to help people live a greater and greater life.
Wow, I love what you said also about your second book project. Let's say Life Mastery, the first book is the theoretical part, and book number 2 is the implementation by telling you the success stories and how it helped other people to live life by design, right?
Yes. Yeah,
I love
absolutely.
life by design, yes, not by default. I understand the message. Thank you so much. And now, yeah, I have one last question for you. Of course, it is when people reach out to you after listening to this episode, and please connect to Mark. He's amazing. Take a look at his book. Of course, do you have special offers and services for the Inspired podcast community?
Yeah, absolutely. I on my website, which is freedom-for-life.net, I have a free what I call discovery tool. And what it is it's a tool that you use. It's a quick survey. And in that quick survey, it allows you to first off kind of get a snapshot of where you're at in your life mastery journey. But the other thing is what's the next steps I can take? So again, that life at maximum value. What can I do to get to that next level in my own life, whether you're a millionaire businessman that's listening to this podcast, or somebody who's a student in university, or wherever you're at in your life. I tell people this: wherever you're at, there's always more, because there's more of you being able to be lived. So that discovery tool helps people to do that. Free tool. You can just go to my website and get there. All my courses and things are out there as well. But the one thing I always want people to do is take the free thing, take the discovery tool, and see where you're at, so you can understand, hey, how do I get just that much better?
Wow, I love that. Thank you so much. I will check it out, of course, your website, put it in the show notes as well. Please reach out to Mark. And now it's time for your last thought to the audience, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not sure where any of the people are at there in this community. They may be at the most amazing season of their life, or they may be in the most challenging. But the one thing I always tell people is this: the one thing I did right through all of my journey when I was trying to figure out through personal development how to unleash the person on the inside, that hero in hiding that we talk about. And there were things that brought value, but none of them brought transformation until I actually created the one that did, which was for me, life mastery. But the one thing I did right throughout all of that time was I never gave up on myself. Even though maybe the first thing I tried didn't work, the second, the third didn't work. I always believed that there was more for me than the life I was living. And I always chose to, what I call, bet on myself one more time, invest in myself one more time. Even if all of the things I've done so far haven't worked, I refuse to give up on the chance to have the life I was hoping for. And so for your community, the inspired community, my desire, like your title says, that you wouldn't lose the inspiration and the belief, that you wouldn't settle for the life where you're at, wherever you're at, but that you would actually say, I'm going to bet on myself. I'm going to believe in myself one more time. And I'm going to find that system, that tool, that strategy that allows me to become the person that I'm created to be, not to have to limit myself, but to be unleashed in the life that I'm created for.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This was so inspiring. Thank you for our interview.
Thank you for the conversation, Caroline. It's been great.
Thank you, and see you in the next episode.